Excellent.
Yes,
Well, Jonathan, I'm so excited to chat with you. You are one of the great St. Andrews graduates, and you've been in a wheelchair since birth. Is that right?
yes, sir.
And now you're on the St. Andrews Legacy Foundation
Correct,
team,
correct,
as I call it, and also you're doing a lot of exciting things to support accessibility around the state.
correct.
Tell me a little bit about that, and then I want to get into a little of the history of our great university slash college that was one of the most accessible places, I believe, on the East Coast, if not before it, in the early days.
Well, Martin, I have, first of all, good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Ellis, class of 1996, communications, public relations major at our beloved university. As Martin mentioned, I am a self-advocate for people with disabilities all across the state of North Carolina, which encompasses uh, all disabilities, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, mental health, and substance abuse services. Uh, it has been my passion for about 35 years now. I cannot believe that. Uh, it 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 just fit into what I believe St. Andrews gave me a foundation of giving it back to our community at large. Um, and um, it even started back when I was born, um, because back in 1978, when I was 5, uh, the public law had had just changed where people with disabilities were incorporated into mainstream schooling, and that's carried on through my life, and that's how I became a knight back in 1991.
Yeah, it's a big deal because people don't realize St. Andrews was either the first or one of the first accessible schools, which is now everywhere. But they had a real commitment. Back then, it was called St. Andrews Presbyterian College, and it had accessible ramps. But the most exciting thing was the facility connected to the gym that allowed someone like you to be able to go to the university.
Correct. If it was not for that dormitory, Burris Rehabilitation Center, and the 24-hour care that we received, uh, that the school paid for at the time because of the robust funding from vocational rehabilitation in North Carolina, um, I would not have been able to attend, because I, I did need, and I still do, uh, to a certain extent, the 24-hour care, um, to uh, fulfill my life's mission and to fulfill my life's dreams, for that matter.
And I want to describe it to people because it was a facility that was also next to the gym, but it had individual rooms that were dormitory, but also it had accessibility. So they had a nurses that could, like a nurses station there, and they could even have different people like yourself. But we also had, during my time, a quadriplegic there that had been going to the Olympics, and he would not have been able to go to school at all. And Bobby, I'm gonna have someone remind me of his last name, but I just remember he became the president of the school student body and many other things. So St. Andrews, when I was there, I went there. I think I entered in about 1978, and at that time, I think there was something like 800 students, and 100 were in either a wheelchair or had some mobility issues where they had the ability to intermingle and work, be in the classrooms together. And that was such a rich experience for me, Jonathan, because I grew up in DC with diversity, but not this type of diversity. It was different. And that's one of the greatest things I loved about St. Andrews is people, not just of different walks of life, but different mobility and accessibility that could be at that school.
Yes, sir. Um, there were some of my best friends to this day are from the school, and I would not have changed anything about it. Uh, yes, we still had our difficulties, but as all of us did, but St. Andrews made it as smooth as possible. I can remember one semester we had. I don't know if it was back in '78 when you were there or not, but we had academic aides that would go with us to class to take our physical notes for us because there was no technology as advanced as it is today that would be able to keep up with the professors as much as they do today. Uh, and even though I was sick in the bed with uh, uh, 100-degree or more fever because of a sinus infection, the doc, uh, I had gone off campus and seen a doctor, and the doctor put me out for a week and put me on bed rest. So even then, my aide was able to go to class, take notes, and I was able to keep up in that week that I was in bed trying to get well.
Yes, I remember that as well. It's such an exciting time. And I'm just thinking of going there. It must have been a big deal for your parents too, because I'm putting myself in their shoes. You going away on your own and being independent, knowing that you needed the extra help, probably took a little extra courage on their part and your part.
Yes, it actually took me a year to convince them that I was uh, capable enough to achieve a college education. Uh, Back when I was first entering St. Andrews back in '91, um, I did not have a summer that year. I graduated in May, and 3 weeks later, I was on campus. It was part of what they called a self-trial run, for lack of a better term, to see if, in fact, um, they would agree to full admission. And it was a 5-week crash course. And you had to take 2 classes. And I got a B in one and a C in another. And when I came back from that 5-week experience, my parents looked at me and said, "Well, that's over. I don't think you'll be." They were thinking, okay, we'll give him the 5 weeks to uh, get it out of his system, and then he'll be home with us the rest of his life. No, I insisted on going back. I went back in September and graduated in '96. And here I am.
Uh, and I'm sure they're extremely proud of you as well for doing it. But yeah, that's a big deal because I mean, many parents kind of experience kind of an empty nester with a kid that has high mobility, but this is a little bit different. And you're going away and you came home thinking that you got out of your system and you were more fired up than ever. Were you nervous going to the school or were you just so excited to have the opportunity?
A little bit of both. Excitement because, yes, it was small town to small town. However, uh, the school was encapsulated, um, so that it didn't feel so small. Um, and yes, I have to admit, I was on academic probation several times, but for, through the grace of God, um, I was able to pull that out and graduate.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, but that's the reality of it. And the first time we talked, it seemed like we had known each other for years. It's amazing how the school it kind of puts something in our blood where when we connect to other St. Andrews graduates, there's a bond that occurs. And for me, Jonathan, I shared before, it was a profound experience. I went to the school and my I had not had as much experience with people with accessibility issues. All other walks of life, but not that in DC growing up. And I had this kind of a noble mindset that everyone that had some challenge was like a a better person. What I didn't know, Jonathan, is that I had put people in wheelchairs and other challenges on a pedestal. And you and I talked about how that's a bias that has a problem as well. And one of the great things of St. Andrews that I mentioned is I went, it's just going to sound funny to people, but I went, wow, people in wheelchairs are both good people and jerks too. and and that
Yes,
and that it's hard to explain unless you experience it. But then what I did is I took this mindset off the pedestal, and you and I know the most important thing for people with challenges is to just see them as the person they are, not see them as different.
exactly. And that's what allowed me to open my eyes to even more people with disabilities, um, that needed vents, trachs, whatever else. Um, I am one of the luckiest men on earth, not needing all that. And just to get to know uprights like yourself uh, has been an amazing experience. And there are some that I continue to talk to today, and it will never change.
One of the things that was so wonderful is that there was an open, also sense of humor. Because I remember Bobby, I think it's McQuarter. If someone knows, please correct me in the message. But I remember one time I saw Bobby going across. He had a chin controller, remote control,
Yes,
to move across the end. And for those that don't know, the dormitories were on one side. Then there was a cause walk, and then the academic on the other, and a beautiful man-made lake in between. So it's just such a beautiful space to be in. And Bobby's going across, and I walked up, and there was a bumper sticker on the back of his chair, and I was so horrified. I ran up to him, said, "Bobby, something awful's occurring. There's a nasty bumper sticker. Do you want me to take it off your wheelchair?" And he said he set me up because he said, "What does it say?" And I was embarrassed. I said, "It says hire the handicapped. They're fun to watch." And he laughed. And of course, he goes, "I made someone put that on there." And I thought, "Oh my God." I was so shocked. But it was that kind of laugh at ourselves sense of humor that was so valuable at the time that we could everyone connected. And I just remember that was one of the things. And then after we both laughed. I mean, he stopped the chair. I think we're on the causewalk, or we're just breaking out laughing because I thought that was so funny that he'd do it
yes,
to set people up. And then
yeah.
someone like me comes along and he was just waiting for that to happen. And I played right into it. But don't you think that was kind of core to it? Because I think we learned to laugh together, to cry together, to speak poetry. There were poetry readings. It
That
was
was an
liberal arts and
icebreaker.
science. Go ahead.
That was an icebreaker. Um, Most of the campus was an icebreaker. As you mentioned, there was poetry classes, poetry readings. Uh, um, I did not get to know Ron Bays as much as I really wanted to. God rest his soul. But uh, for the last semester of my college career, that man has turned my life around. Uh, I remember writing, and I wish I still had it, but I don't. I remember writing 100 pages of poetry in a semester and getting 100 on it. And I wish to God I had taken more classes under that wonderful human being. Someone, uh, when I first got on campus, uh, took me aside and said, "You don't want to take any of those classes under Bayes because he is not a Christian." Well, we all know there's all kinds of walks of life, and I truly wish I was able to do more under Bayes than I was led on to believe, because if it was not for that, I would probably have already had some books published, because that was how strong he taught his craft.
I want to bring that up because one of the other cornerstones of the professors there is how they all challenged us to think from different perspectives. And I've talked about this before. If you picked a perspective trying to appease a professor. This would be Bushhoven or any of them. They'd literally go to the opposite extreme and push you to build an argument in the opposite direction. And, we don't know, but Ron might have done that to the person that said that to you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he did. But the beauty of St. Andrews was our different perspectives. Whether I was on the left or they were on the right, we met in the middle.
Some other things they had that were wonderful is the wheelchair, I think basketball. Did you ever watch any of those where they would have the people who are more accessible in wheelchairs and then those of what do they call us? Walkies or something or stand up? There was a term for the rest of
Uh,
us.
Upright.
Uprights. That was it. Uprights. They'd have the uprights and the wheelies competing together in the chairs. And of course, the guys in the wheelchair who had full accessibility with their hands were powerhouses and just buried them. Those were some of the most fun things to watch is that basketball match where you had to go around in a
Yes,
wheelchair.
I watched a lot of those. Because of my dexterity, I was not able to participate, but I was able to watch.
And cheer on because I remember there were people on the side, similar to
And,
yourself, that were
and,
like cheering them on.
and cheering them on. And um, that is another great thing about St. Andrews. It was our togetherness. We were not segregated. Yes, we had our own um, dormitories, but as time progressed, day after day, people ended up coming to us. We ended up going to them, and we began to um, have these terrific bonds that I will never forget.
Bobby, I remember enjoying because he was so brilliant, going to see him in the center, and then one time, Bobby was this very distinctive looking guy, and I just remember saying, Bobby, I love our conversations, but I have to admit, you seem to attract the best looking women on campus, and I don't mind that either. And Bobby leaned over and he said, "That's why I'm here too."
Yes, it's that quick wit of St. Andrews too that um, we all possess in some form or fashion.
Now, I had a good friend, Larry Smith, and Larry was from, I think he was a small town in West Virginia, very poor small town. And he had a homemade crutch. And I think he had, I don't remember, I think it might have been cerebral palsy, but it was from birth. And he walked with a crutch and he had braces on his legs. And we became good friends over the time, so much that he ultimately moved to the Raleigh area. And it was just really interesting because we would have these great kind of political debates. And one of the things I learned is Larry had a very, very strong speech challenge with his, but it was amazing how when we'd sit down and discuss and argue and debate, how I would hear him almost intuitively when he was speaking. And that kind of bond we made as friends was so rich. And he's passed on, but he managed to live independently in Raleigh and eventually got into the YMCA in downtown Raleigh. And I lost track. A lot was going on in my life of him, but I found out that he ultimately passed away there, but the people just loved him. And I just remember how rich that experience was and the friendship we built together. One story that really stands out about a time with Larry that he said was a very significant point in our friendship. He was visiting Raleigh. We were going somewhere where we had to go through a door, and Larry had the door and was pulling it open, and somebody tried to reach around me to help him open the door, and I had a visceral reaction and just like put my arm up, just like, and stopped them. And I said, Larry can do it on his own. And he told me later how much that meant to him. I think it's representative of the importance of giving people the room to do whatever they can do. And that's something else I learned from St. Andrews. Don't deny them the dignity of their own struggle. I don't know a better way to say it.
Yes, and as part of the foundation, if you don't mind me going there for a minute,
Sure.
um, that's the piece that I want to bring to it. Um, the the fact that yeah, yeah, the campus might be gone, but our connection never broke. You know, yes, we had a hard time getting it started up because we lost so many emails during the transition. Uh, but hopefully we can get everybody back on track and get get the family bond back that I began to feel when I first moved or went to St. Andrews Presbyterian College.
Yeah, and that was so exciting because just so you know, Jonathan, when we talked even before the school had closed, I was on the alumni council. We had conversations. We wanted more diversity than we had, and we were going, okay, what are we going to do about this, and how can it occur? We had one person that was in a wheelchair, but it was still we wanted even more. And thanks to your relentlessness, you reached out and said, hey, I want to be part of this and help. And I was like, this is exactly what we're looking for. And many people have come forward to say, okay, the campus is gone, but does the memories, the mission, what it stood for can live on? How are we going to do this? And that's what brought this St. Andrew's Legacy Foundation into existence by a lot of volunteers that have spent both money and time. And thank goodness you reached out and say, I want to be part of this. I feel I represent part of the school, which you do, and want to be part of keeping the memories alive and the mission.
Yes, definitely the mission. Um, and, and I remember, um, I don't know what the name of it was, but uh, every Sunday night or so, uh, depending on your schedule, you were always invited to the chapel for a devotional. Um, and I forget the chaplain's name when I was there, but we became a unit um, if I was available to go. And that was tremendous. Um, I remember having a Christian concert come to Belk one Friday night, and the place was packed. Uh, so not only did we get the well versed um, academic um, education that we could get, in my mind, we got the most educational Christian education that we could get as well. Uh, it's hard to find these days.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I remember another thing of St. Andrews is there was this real cute girl that was in a wheelchair, and um, I got the courage to ask her out to take her out to dinner or something, and she said, "I'll drive." And we'll have the best parking spot they have available. I remember, and we had a great time. It was just exciting. It was something like I wanted to ask her out. I wanted to at least have dinner with her, but it got me to overcome whatever was left there in meeting, and we just had a great time. And I don't think it really led to something else, another meeting, but we both enjoyed it. And those were those experiences that occurred that are part of it. And just like you, we talked about how heartbroken we were when this school closed because we both agree, and so do the alumni council. Agreed that the campus was part of the great part of the school, but it's not available. That doesn't mean we can't invent something and create something. And that's what they've done with the St. Andrew's Legacy Foundation by the people not just saying something should be done, but doing something and building it and investing sweat equity into it and moving it forward. And then we have the meeting once a month, and you were concerned about availability, and it's over Zoom, so you can always come to it when you're available.
yes, and to be, I have seen multiple alumni on the alumni page asking, "How can I get involved after I join?" Now, that has momentum there, Martin.
Well,
And
you're a natural leader. Come on, let's just admit it. A courageous leader, without a question. That's why I'm excited to have you on. And I told you once you got on, I'm going to steal you for part of the communications and keep the
I've
conversation going.
I've already told uh Gary and the president
Wally. Yes, absolutely.
that I would be on communications with you and Rooney. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we have a great team there. The thing that struck me of you is just I want people that want to step forward and go, instead of why didn't they pick me, they're going, how can I help? Because there's a difference. And Jonathan, I've lived in both worlds. I was in a world when I was younger where it's more like, well, why didn't they choose me? And then I matured to the level, if I care about it, I should let them know. And that's what you did, and many other people that said, I want to help, I want to be part of it. And how can we contribute?
And how could we make it happen? Um,
What I'd love to hear from you is also any other stories of St. Andrews that you'd like to share.
um, even though I could not play basketball, um, um, I was befriended by the head basketball coach back then and ended up being the team manager. Um, so not only was the school inclusive, but also our extracurricular activities were as inclusive as they could be. Um, so you would often find me in the gym as a gym rat, um, even even when I'm supposed to be studying. But it it ended up being a wonderful experience overall, and I ended up being one of the lucky ones that was able to uh, get some knowledge from the hallowed halls of St. Andrews.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. That's a wonderful story. I got to be involved with photography. I was sort of the engineer of the radio station, which just meant I was willing to repair the turntables and ship the carts off to get revitalized, and many other things also as well that I got to be part of. And there was so many opportunities for extracurricular activity there. And the other thing, Jonathan, I remember is when they had parties, they often would try to have them in the spaces where uh, they were accessible. You know, we did have dorms which didn't have elevators back then, like Mecklenburg that I was in, but I remember the parties would often be in the flatter dorms, which would allow for more accessibility.
And that is what I loved about St. Andrews. We were included no matter where it was. And one other story that I will bring up, I was part of the winter class when we had winter semester that was able to have an adjunct professor come down from Maryland, and we wrote the entire curriculum within 3 weeks for the therapeutic writing program to be a degree. And that is one thing that I will always remember and always be like, I was part of that. And for the people that benefited behind me about getting a degree under therapeutic writing, I give them gold stars. Because that involved me uh, trying to uh, ensure that we had um, something like this to carry on the legacy of what therapeutic writing was. And what a beautiful testament to the college um, for agreeing to put that in the curriculum and to um, use the equestrian program and branch it off to allow people to get degrees to help people with disabilities or any other mobility issue where horses imitate the most natural gait for people with disabilities. So that will always be in the back of my mind.
What a beautiful thing. And for people who weren't familiar, St. Andrews had quite an extensive facility for people to have their horses there and others, and it built out over time. It started with one person taking a stand that they wanted to bring their horse to St. Andrews, and Rooney Kaufman's the keeper of that history. But that's look how that rippled all the way through your involvement, and then having more resources available and programs utilizing the horses that we had. That's a great story. Today, share with people what you're working with as far as your main mission in North Carolina and how people could possibly be involved with that as well. We'll put the information about St. Andrew's Legacy in the notes as well. But talk about your other passion, which is making such a profound difference in our state.
The my, my career passion has always been, um, and this is this started with St. Andrews, um, and that is making sure that people with disabilities, no matter what um, background they have, had a voice at the table, um, regardless of whether you could speak, use augmentative devices, write your thoughts down, and have someone else speak for you, or whatever. Um, um, we, unbeknownst to me, um, 35 years ago, we did not have a voice at the table, unfortunately. And we still have a long ways to go. However, things are changing, laws are changing, but some laws are just antiquated in my mind and need to be changed. It just takes one chisel, one hammer. You might be at it a while, but eventually it's going to happen. And I'm waiting for the day that the glass ceiling breaks federally and in North Carolina.
Excellent. Well, thanks for all you're doing to make it make a difference in our wonderful state. And this was just delightful to go down memory lane with you and remember some of my fond memories of those that used wheelchairs and other ways to get around at St. Andrews that made such a profound difference in my life. Because one of the reasons I went to St. Andrews is because of my learning challenges and dyslexia and so forth. And I didn't understand it back then, but I had a severe phobia of tests. So I did very poorly on my SATs, but did very well on verbals. And St. Andrews let me write what an essay and multiple things to prove that I could get into it. So I'm very grateful for St. Andrews giving me multiple ways to say, yes, I can do things. Here are my challenges, and I want to be included. And this is a such an important thing. We keep that commitment of connecting and overseeing our differences and finding ways to find common ground, which St. Andrews offered us. And more important, challenging our thinking so we don't get in our own little bubbles, and
Yeah,
lose track of the importance of seeing things from perspectives of people we don't agree with as well.
exactly. Um, were you able to overcome your challenges
Well,
as well?
actually, I think so. I got the Ethel Foreman Writers Award thanks to Mike Salibi. I still, the fact of it is I don't skim well, so I use text to audio. But I've now helped produce 5 books, published books. So the joke is I have 5 books that I've never read, but I've listened to all of them. So I would say I'd say I'm doing pretty good. And the breakthrough was making sure I didn't use my challenges as an excuse. And Jonathan, you know exactly what I mean with that. That
Yeah,
when I was younger, sometimes I used it as an excuse. Well, I have dyslexia, so I need extra help. And St. Andrews was a great place because they wouldn't let me off the hook. Okay, well, what are you going to do that will prove you've done as much work as someone who could read very fast. And they'd give me assignments that would be often quite challenging to be complimentary to prove that I had made the effort.
Yes. And at least they were able to accommodate you in that space.
Yeah.
Uh, not not cannot make those accommodations. And I'm thankful that St. Andrews was able to make those accommodations for us both and for the community as a whole.
And I want to say, and also challenged us to stretch beyond our comfort zone. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, definitely.
Which is equally important. This was delightful. It's so excited to have you part of the team and look forward to hearing from other people. We've got so many, we've got drama, we've got bagpipes, we've got the science area. There's so many facets of the school. We'll want to also find more ways to include them.
Yes. And I look forward to it. Have a good evening.
You too. Take care.
Take care.